What's going on, folks?
With the path laid out by our master.
One sec.
Crush them underfoot.
Beautiful. Thank you, Valkia. Anyways, we're running it back with another replay. We're getting in here with some Khorne versus Kislev. Kislev's been beating Khorne a lot, according to the total tavern win rates lately, but I have been experimenting a bunch with the Blood God again. Back in here, trying to regain my old form. This was one of the better games that I had while I was, you know, kind of just getting my feet back under me on ladder. Jesse James is somebody who I've played a bunch, maybe not a bunch, I think we've had like 4 or 5 games. Every single one of them is pretty good. They've been doing a pretty good job of learning a lot of the factions, being a fairly newer player. So we've got some Chaos Warrior Halberds and a Chaos Warrior going to the #1 objective right now. We'll be rotating a Chaos Warrior to the low ground. Bunch of Marauders, Blood Beasts, and the Hellforged Bellowers here on the low ground middle objective. And my opponent just getting geared up to kind of take a frontline fight against me. You got a bunch of Kislevite Warriors here. You've got an Ice Guard with Glaive to defend Little Grom in the back, which is actually a little scary. Little Grom does massive damage, very, very good artillery piece, and does very nicely outrange the Hellforged Bellowers. See a Snow Leopard summon coming out from my opponent also to get after this artillery piece. It's still very strong, the Hellforged Bellowers. Its limited range makes it a little bit easier to counter. It did lose a little bit of damage on the Vortex, but it is still just exceptional at clearing out both infantry. Does good damage to monstrous units as well as flyers. There's just a lot of use cases for the Bellowers here. Taking a lot of damage, my opponent doing a very good job of focusing on it right now. Sloutnir going down to the front line on the Kislevite Warriors. And we use some Furies back here to dive on one of the other Kislevite Warriors. It's a pretty good target for Furies. They actually do massive damage to these guys since they're so lightly armored.
Keep it from the foe.
Getting them nice and beat up before the Marauders move in is honestly pretty useful, because then you can get a really nice engagement with your infantry, grind through them quickly, and get out before they're too beat up. But Furies are going down. I'm actually going to use my Marauders to kind of circumvent into the Ice Guard Glaive line here. Now, one Blood Beast took a massive Little Grom shot there. And realizing that I couldn't leave it to shoot too much longer, I used Valkia to dive in. She gets some good damage off. But some Streltsy come out and are going to kind of zone her away for a moment here. I'm just going to be working on getting up into the secondary line of my opponent now. You can see here in the front, we take a massive engagement against the Oath Brothers of Tor with my Minotaurs and the Blood Beasts of Khorne. And these guys are getting absolutely hammered right now. Massive damage and casualties coming in against this very elite Warbear Rider unit. Warbear Riders are a little bit lackluster as of late for Kislev, I would say. For whatever reason, they just don't seem to do all that well in combat, despite having pretty good stats. In melee defense especially, you would think they'd do a little bit better in a prolonged engagement, but they are getting folded up there. Really razor close game, though. The big advantage that I have right now, though, is the Marauders getting up on top of the Ice Guard Glaives here. Ice Guard Glaives are pretty tough, but Marauders have good melee attack. They can actually get around the melee defense of an Ice Guard. And this is an 1100 gold unit for Kislev, as opposed to a 400 gold unit for Khorne. So massive uptrade potential incoming for me. And Valkia just keeps landing in and attacking Little Grom, which is really getting quite beat up now. See a Patriarch coming out. But now my opponent has to make a choice. You either use Solyax to heal up Little Grom back here, which wouldn't be a bad thing to do for sure. It can definitely use a little bit of healing. Keep it a little healthier. You've also got your Ice Witch of Tempest up in the front line. And it's really her against the world at this point. All the Kislevite warriors have been killed for the most part. A couple very tattered ones kind of rallying here in the middle distance. It's just her anchored on this last one here. So she's got to be very careful. You know, we've got some Blood Beasts running around. These Minotaurs may be broken for now. They've got 8 models, though, and while they don't have a lot of HP, they could get one really good charge off and get some extra damage. And we do still have this Chaos Warrior in the middle. It's going to be very hard to break down, and the Halberds on the high ground, hanging out for now, but definitely something that I'm thinking about moving in. Hellforge Bellower really hasn't gotten a lot of work done up to this point. It's mostly just been attracting aggro from my opponent's artillery. You can see here, one of the Minotaurs getting shot in the back by Little Grom. My opponent doing a pretty good job of making sure to keep these guys away. You don't want them to rally in the late game and potentially be a late game dive unit that can really get after you. Sleipnir on top of the Streltsy with the Marauders jumping in here on top of them as well. The Blood Beast trying to get after Little Grom, but a little bit too much aggression from my opponent trying to push away with these guys. To at the very least, like, drag the Patriarch and the Ice Witch into a proper engagement against some infantry, where they'll take a little bit of work here. Terror Route going down on the Blood Beast, very unfortunate. Some more Blood Beasts looking to maybe get a charge off and do some damage. And the Minotaurs here, getting after the Kossovite Dervishes that were trying to dive my Hellforge Bellowers. So, just standing in here, getting the last few attacks in. They had about 800 value last time we looked. Getting another 200 value out of them is pretty nice, and a beautiful shot from the Hellforge Bellowers. Finally getting some damage to really hang its hat on. Taking this Ice Guard Glaive down to just about half HP, and this Marauder unit, dude, has literally ground the entire Ice Guard Glaive unit here into dust. They keep trying to scoot forward and shoot. They haven't really been fighting in melee combat very effectively. And the Marauders are just getting massive value from me right now. And back here, we do have a Marauder unit getting swept up, but they did a pretty good job of pounding the Streltsy down. Streltsy very beleaguered, pretty low, definitely not in the best condition currently. Finally moving my Chaos Warrior Halberd in. We have a small value lead, nothing too significant, but Valkia is pretty healthy here. And we've got these Chaos Warriors kind of mucking up the works for my opponent's Griffin Legion, while Exalted Bloodletters moving up the field now, looking to get into combat. Getting a very good engagement. Horn of Khorne going down. A lot of the Griffin Legion suddenly finding themselves pretty trapped up in here. The Chaos Warriors do Terror Route, which is a little unfortunate, but the Flesh Hounds are really making this miserable for Kislev. Flesh Hounds oftentimes, I find, don't perform very well in one-on-one fights, but they are an excellent mobile mass unit. They're very good at locking down more expensive options and forcing decisive engagements on top of infantry, which is kind of what's happening here. These Griffin Legion, man, they came in, swept up that Marauder, and immediately end up just taking an absolute beating in melee, with the Flesh Hounds actually in a pretty good position to hound them down here. They just staying on them, nipping at their heels, dragging their HP down slowly but surely is going really well for me. Exalted Bloodletters threatening Little Grom some here, as well as also pushing up into the Streltsy, being very disruptive. And the Hellforge Bellower is very beat up but still alive, lots of ammo for it. A few Ice Guard Glaive being pushed off, Kossovite Dervishes and Kislevite Warriors trying to hang on to that number 3 objective. I've just been occasionally throwing a unit back there, either something that's tattered or very mobile to, like, threaten the point, and then pulling back my opponent. Not really having a very good time trying to hang on to it. A second Frostworm comes out. Valkia does take a pretty serious beating as she's fighting here, but she does a decent amount of damage. She's going to be able to get back up in the air, and the Khorne Gores now doing some big damage to the Ice Witch, with some Marauder Horsemen throwing axes right behind. Khorne Gores, they can get you tons of value for sure, but you got to be pretty careful using these guys. The reason that you need to be careful with Khorne Gores is they don't have a lot of mass. So even though they are very well suited for killing large targets, stuff like Frostworms and even lots of monsters infantry can just kind of bulldoze through these guys. Having some mass nearby to, like, lock the enemy units in place helps out tremendously. It's kind of what I'm trying to go for here. Up on the high ground, you can see the Patriarch actually got surrounded by the Flesh Hounds, and they've really ripped him to pieces. This is one of their other really good uses they're honestly pretty good against single entities. They do some pretty good damage with their weapon strength. They surround, and they function kind of like, you know, actual IRL wild dogs. If you've ever seen videos of, like, hyenas, what are they called? I think they're called painted dogs. Pack hunters usually, like, what they do is they surround bigger targets, and they, like, nip at their flanks, and occupy their attention at the front, while the real damage dealt is to the haunches, and the limbs. So that's kind of what the flesh hounds do in the game as well. If you get a really good surround off, it's kind of cool. It's just a small little connection between the two, and you can see they're actually doing some pretty good damage to the Frostworm here. After having killed the Patriarch, killed a bunch of Griffin Legion, they're over here hounding down a much more expensive unit than them, and doing a pretty good job of keeping it occupied. The Marauder Horseman moving over to get some throwing axes in. Little Grom's still alive, gotten its value back. I did lose the Hellforge Bellowers in here and all of the ruckus, but we are just all over the backline for Kislev. I've got Exalted Bloodletters still running around out here, grinding out some value. Chaos Warrior Halberds literally stuffing the deployment zones. The Exalted Bloodletters moving over to help. And the Horsemen getting a little extra damage against the Frostworm. Those Flesh Hounds finally going to crumble out, but 1,200 value. Looking pretty juicy for them. And Valkia and the Khorne Gores get on top of Little Grom over here. And Little Grom going to be going down. Khorne's Bloody Bride in the Khorne Gores doing a very good job of cleaning it up. Really good Hailstorm coming in from Jesse, so we're going to try and avoid as much of the damage as possible, getting a lot of the Khorne Gores out. Valkia disengages back up into the air. 2,500 on Valkia is pretty brutal, man. She is so good in these late game scenarios. She's got great leadership at 80. So even if she gets pretty beat up, as long as you got Demon Shield available... excuse me. As long as you've got Demon Shield available... the sky's the limit on Valkia's damage value. She can always take fights, basically. Just don't let her get below about 1,000, and you'll be in a pretty good spot with her. Her biggest fears are flyers and other insanely powerful single-entity duelists. So, when you want to take fights against big, scary single entities, you just pop Demon Shield to do it. Otherwise, you use her to kind of do what I was doing in this game. Dive Little Grom, drop Sloughtneers on expensive units, dive in to support mobility fights, and then take selective engagements against the big scary units, like the Frostworms here, which have really been doing a lot of damage for Jesse, but slowly losing out on efficiency because the rest of the army has just not been able to really get much done. Cossified Dervishes constantly getting hounded down, no pun intended, by the Flesh Hounds. Another Marauder Horseman with the throwing axes come out. They got a really good side charge in this Cossified Dervish unit. Add insult to injury, and they fill this last guy full of axes. Now they're going to grab the number 3 objective, and I'm going to get that nice triple cap here. While the Exalted Bloodletters, man, just slowly grinding out their value. They're a very difficult unit to kill, actually. And here in this fight, they are going to get jumped on by both of the Frostworms, taking the combined efforts of 2 big damage-dealing single entities to kill them. Honestly, goes to tell you how rock solid this unit is. 1,200 value, and they've been playing on my opponent's backline a bunch. So, really nice stuff from them. Chaos Warrior Halberds hiding in the woods, dodging a hailstorm here, while the Khorne Gores just get a little bit more value. They've done pretty good damage. I mean, they cost 725 gold, and cost efficiency is never the issue for Khorne Gores. It's just that they're so vulnerable to missiles, and they get shredded by good cycle charging, that I usually recommend them in reserves more than anything, and you just limit it to like 2 guys, and then you can bring them out into certain matchups, and they can just absolutely dominate in the late game, which is very much what they're doing now, getting on top of this Frostworm, big damage going down on her. And the Ice Witch with the Tempest Magic also on a pretty bad footing here, trying to take down these horsemen, but they're just barely outpacing her, and just filling her with axes as they run away here. down to 560 HP. She does break. Valkia's looking to finish the job here. Gonna be going after her, trying to get a little extra value, but my opponent is gonna tap out here. Kislevites Warriors and the Kosovite Dervishes he had left were just a little too beat up, and the Streltsy I would have had some answers for. I had a Marauder up here. Marauders actually are really good against Kislev. As long as the Marauders aren't getting run over by the Winged Lancers in Griffin Legion, then your Khorne Marauders are actually really good for killing not just Kislevite Warriors, but pretty much any of the backline hybrid shooting for Kislev outside of the Ice Guard with the swords. Streltsy, Ice Guard Glaives. They can have a little bit of limited success against the armored Kossars. That's a much worse fight for them. Other Kossar variants with the bows and the spears. Marauders are super multi-dimensional in this matchup, actually. Really good frontline pushers, for sure. Really what you want to use the Chaos Warriors for is to hold points alone, where the shielded variant's just impossible to gun down from a distance. The Halberd, your opponent can't get after them with mobility. And in late game scenarios, get them up into some terrain, kind of like what I'm doing here, and just have them be an ambush unit, basically. Might sound a little counterintuitive, but these heavily armored warriors in a forest, despite not having a shield, it's going to be really hard to poke them down from range when they're sitting in the trees like this. If my opponent were to bring out some armored Kossars or just some infantry, they can come out and roadblock, and then you can't really use Griffin Legion to like hammer them down, because these guys are just going to kind of sit there, chip away with their AP halberds, and just do massive damage to any mobility trying to get in on them. And you can always support them. You got plenty of mobility as Khorne, so that's kind of the idea behind this particular game that I was playing here. A few tattered Griffin Legion being swept up by Fleshhounds, and a fresh Blood Beast was there at the end, so really close for most of that game, but towards the end, man, I'm telling you, Khorne, in a late game scenario, if you just keep it close for an extended period of time, and you can just keep enough mobility alive to really keep your opponent from consolidating anywhere on the battlefield, you can take a close battle and turn it into a decisive victory with how cost-effective Khorne is. And that's kind of what happened here. Got a big value lead up into the later stages of the game, and there's just not a lot you can do to reestablish yourself at that point. Khorne is just super good at the face-to-foot style. They just get after you. They never let up on the pressure, and they just bring out solid units who, even if they don't necessarily get all their value back like these Blood Beasts, they at least are guaranteed to get some pretty decent value, and occupy a lot of shooting and a lot of other shock damage units as they try to break them down, and that allows some of your other elements to really shine through, which is kind of what the Marauders did this game. All of them got good value except for one. That's okay, though, because the others got so much more value. I mean, we got two Marauders here, more than doubling their value. 1,188 value on a Marauder is kind of crazy. Very rare that you see this, but it is something that can happen with good positioning. The Humble Marauder of Khorne is actually kind of a nightmare unit for a lot of factions, and this is definitely one of the matchups where they can turn into nightmare fuel for your opponent. And then you add into the equation, you got stuff like Exalted Bloodletters, Khorne Gores, Minotaurs, Fleshhounds, Marauder Horsemen, Throwing Axes, and your opponent has so many targets they have to focus on. These guys slip in under the radar and just get all that work done, and your opponent wonders where their value lead may have gone. Valkia, good as always, 2,500 value on her. You use her, as I said, to just harry your opponent. She's amazing at drawing aggro and surviving it, as well as diving in and fighting big scary monsters and chipping them down slowly but surely. Again, getting decisive engagements in the mobility game, where she can chip down models of stuff like Warbear Riders if she had ended up fighting them. She didn't in this game. She can very easily fight these guys, though, the Oath Brothers. Not alone, with a little bit of support. That's really all Valkia needs. Don't let her get trailered What I mean by that is, you know, the trailer for Valkia shows her getting attacked by like a million dudes, and she's just kind of getting pummeled for half the trailer, which is, you know, a little bit of a disservice to her. Don't let that happen to her. Give her like a Fury unit or some Marauders or some Fleshhounds to fight alongside her and buffer some damage, and she'll just shred everything. She's great. I love her to death. And yeah, that's going to be it here. You know, little scattered shot on this particular battle, but that's kind of the way of Khorne games. When you come back in and cast them, sometimes in the moment the game seems to be moving much slower, but then on further reflection, when you come back to it, everything is just going at breakneck pace. There is so much happening at once. You're positioning your units, you're getting all sweaty, and you're trying to make the best possible decisions in the moment. So, hope I kind of captured the frenetic nature of a lot of these domination games. It's one of the reasons why I enjoy it so much. You're not just juggling the units you already got on the field. You gotta consider what your opponent's bringing in. You gotta consider what you got on caps, where your opponent might have rallying units that can come in and either cause problems for your victory tickets, or just get in and get some extra damage before they go out on their shield. Summons and what your opponent is summoning in. So many different variables. Just make for a really engaging game mode. So, anyways, I'm going to call it here. Finally end the rambling, and I'll see you guys on the next one. If you want to, go check out my most recent tournament stream. Finally got my most recent tournament win. It's been a little while since I got one, and I did it with the Blood God himself, so, or themselves. You know, Khorne cares not from whence you originate, right? Anyways, later, guys. Peace out, and GG's as always.